formally welcome all of you for joining CLA's How to Start a Laundromat webinar. As I said earlier, we do this every month as a service to the industry, and we want to give a helping hand to those of you that are taking a little deeper dive, trying to learn some more about the laundromat business. And I'm just going to set a few sort of mission statements and ground rules here I think could be helpful. One is that we are not here to recruit you into the business. We are not here to sell you on anything. We're coming to you from this perspective of the trade association that's serving the industry. Brian and I, we're both Brians. We are not here to help you get a laundromat in 30 days, get a laundromat in 15 days, miraculously find seller financing. We're not here to find you a free laundromat. We're not here to find you a passive or absentee business. As we'll explore along the way, those aren't what we feel are fully accurate representation of what's going on in the industry. And so really our job is to be the adults in the room, give you a clear and level-headed, a positive view of the industry, but also give you all the facts that you're going to need to be successful. And of course, we can't teach you the industry in 90 minutes, but we're going to give you some of the things that I think you're going to need to make some good decisions going forward. And we want to present ourselves as a resource. And so with that, I'll just give you a little bit more introduction to the organization. Again, nonprofit trade association. This is our 65th year in service to the industry. We are an unbiased and brand agnostic resource. And we've got a staff here of full-time professionals that are focused on giving you the education, the networking, the advocacy, and the business solutions that you're going to need to be successful. And like I said, we see this education of those of you that are thinking about getting into the business as a solid part of that mission, not only to put you on the right path, but honestly, better educated first-time new investors are good for business. It's good for the industry, and we don't want you to see a mistake. We don't want mistakes that are there to potentially impact the health of the industry. So that's a little bit of the perspective from which we come on this. You've got these two Brians to help you along the way. I'll start with just saying a word or two about myself and my role. I serve as president and CEO of CLA. It's an organization that I've been lucky to be part of for the last 33 years, I guess, and counting. So I've had an opportunity to work with thousands and thousands and thousands of first-time laundromat owners. I'm not an owner myself. Like I say, I'm more of a academic when it comes to the industry. I've committed a career to learning best practices and spending a lot of time with people like Brian Holland, who are out there doing it every day. And so we're delighted to have Brian Holland on board as our special guest. We'll run out of time if I were to run through all the accolades, but at a very minimum, Brian has built a incredible multi-store operation, coming from a background in big pharma. I know many of you are coming out of a corporate background or considering making the leap. Brian has not only been successful in that endeavor, but has also given back in serving on the CLA Board of Directors and our Laundry Cares Foundation Board of Directors as chair in both cases. So Brian, welcome, buddy. Good to have you on board. Brian and I have done an awful lot of work together, and it's fun to do this. But Brian, maybe a good place to start is maybe just tell the folks a little bit about the Laundry Cafe itself. Kind of just give us the top lines on what that multi-store operation in Philly looks like, and then we'll use that as a bit of a table setter and jump into some more of our content.
Sure. And first of all, thanks to everybody for being here. I think you've made the first step towards having a better laundromat than the average bear. Because when you start with the CLA, what you find is you get education that comes free that will help you make great decisions and be even more profitable than other stores. But my background, I came from big pharma. As Brian said, spent over 2 decades in big pharma. I was a senior executive there. And I learned through that experience that there are some pretty significant healthcare disparities in the United States. And I wanted to figure out a way to deal with those on a very, one-to-one level. And to be honest with you, I searched it, all across the country looking for different businesses that I could get into. And I landed on laundry for a number of reasons, many of which are probably obvious to you. It's small business and it allows you to start up without secondary education. You don't have to have advanced degrees, largely cash business, simple. You don't have, accounts receivable or significant inventory to work with, small numbers of people, and you can basically start anywhere there is a need. But my specific focus was I recognized early on that laundry has something that we affectionately call dwell time. And dwell time is that you know that your customers are going to come to see you either every week or every other week for years. And so, unlike most businesses where you get one shot at disseminating a message, in laundry, you actually get a different opportunity every single week. And I was interested in doing things that were laundry related, but also unrelated to laundry. So, prostate cancer awareness, breast cancer awareness, stroke prevention, how to start a new business. We actually give information about that. And all of these services were free of charge, how to repair credit. And we would do these seminars actually inside our stores. And that's why we named it the Laundry Cafe. It really was as much about the cafe part as it was about laundry. We had Starbucks coffee in all of our locations. We had free Wi-Fi. And so it really was about creating an environment that people could relax and actually learn about things that might impact their lives favorably. So yeah, that's the Laundry Cafe.
Yeah, no, and the community engagement is near and dear to us as we both work on the Laundry Cares Foundation, which we'll talk some more about as we go along. But it all starts with having great locations, and Brian and his partners built out 5 large format stores, well equipped, the latest technology, and that was sort of the basis for being able to make that reach into the community. So we'll be picking Brian's brain here along the way. You got 2 Brians, so we go by BW and BH. And so if you're in the questions or the comments and you've got something that's specific for one of the 2 of us, feel free to address that accordingly. So like I said, I'm going to go from here to just give you a couple of the basic top lines for the industry, definitions and descriptions, just a table setter. And then I'm going to go through some reasons why I think you should pursue a laundromat investment and some things that our members love about the business. And then I'm going to balance that off with some of the challenges and pitfalls and obstacles and issues that you can come across. Again, we want to give you a level-headed look at the business.
Very good.
But at the top, we're not here to recruit you. We're here to educate you and put you in a good position to take your next steps. And we've had plenty of people that take this course and they get fired up and we see them become a member right away. We see them at the next event and we're good to go. Others who say, well, maybe this isn't right for me or maybe not right for me at the moment. So all that is good with us. We just want to give you that place to start. And Bill asked in the chat, BH's stores are in the Philadelphia market.
Yes.
So we'll learn some more about Philly as we go along here. So, all right, let's jump into some of the prepared content. And again, please use the question and answer box. You can use the chat as well. But, I'll be keeping an eye on these questions as they come in and insert those and pose those to Brian, or I'll weigh in on a couple of these depending on the subject matter. So let's start with who are we and what are we doing here? So Laundromat, Coin Laundry, Lavanderia, Washateria, Laundrette, all these different names basically mean what I would call a retail laundromat, a place where people are coming to do their clothes. What we're not talking about are the vended laundry machines that you would find in an apartment building or dormitory or some condo, some kind of multi-housing. Sure, that's vended laundry, but that's sort of a different business model and a different audience. We're the laundromat store, if you will. And with that in mind, we've got about 29,000 or so in the US. That is definitely an estimate. We'll talk a lot about this being a highly fragmented business. If you've already done some searching around, you might say, hey, you know what, there's a laundromat that's not even on Google. Like, yeah, they are out there somewhat under the radar in cases, but our best estimate is around that 29,000 mark. Sales volume is another bit of an estimate. The 6 billion, I would say, is a very conservative estimate. I think you could probably push that up to 8 or 9 billion and still be pretty safe with that, but I'd rather kind of give a conservative view. Now, statistically, and again, we have an annual benchmarking survey that we'll talk a lot about along the way here. So this is data that's coming through the association, but the statistical mean for store size is 2,850 square feet. We've got plenty of successful stores that are much smaller and much larger. It's really more of a function of what's available in your market, trying to kind of calibrate the size of your store to the market demand. And Brian, this might be an opportunity to ask you about the footprint for the Laundry Cafe because it very much is tied into kind of pairing up the size with the density and the size of markets that you're serving. So give us a little rundown across those locations as to what you've been doing with store size.
So let me offer this. I think that every city is unique, and even within a city, you're going to find that there's submarkets, right? So I would start with census data and population information and traffic data and create an algorithm. I have my own, but create an algorithm on how to choose stores. All of my stores are 7,000 square feet and above, which is a pretty large size. I think our largest is 9,400 square feet. That's big. Now, I'm here to tell you that I wish I could talk to my former self. I don't think you have to have a 7,000 square foot store any longer. I think you can have a 3,000 square foot store and be phenomenally successful, or a 5,000 square foot store, or even a 1,500 square foot store. Stores can be successful. Regardless of the size. I think it depends on where you are, what your competition is like, and what the population density and the laundry machine density is. That is to say, do the apartment buildings nearby have laundry incorporated, or do they have to go off site for it? And so you don't have to choose the biggest size store. In fact, that could be a liability if you don't plan it well. So yeah, I chose 7 to 9,000 square foot. When I was starting, it was like 2011, which is about when I met Brian. And my first decision about laundry was to get data that I could rely on. And so I joined as a member for the Coin Laundry Association even before I had a store. And actually, I went to the Clean Show before I had a store because I wanted to get facts and figures so that I could make real decisions based on empirical evidence. And what you'll find very quickly is that you can be successful in any size store. It doesn't matter what you choose. It matters that you match your opportunity. That's what's most important.
Right. No, that's well said. And be clear, you don't regret the 7,000 or 9,400. You've done a lot of business in those locations, but I see your point about you can be successful at various sizes, again, depending on the market that you're serving. So, the stores have performed real well for you. So I guess another couple just key points I want to share up front is that most of our members are leasing their locations, meaning they are renting those spaces from the commercial real estate landlord. They're on long-term leases. We'll come back and talk a lot about leases as we go through the program here. We certainly have lots of members that would love to own the real estate, and some certainly do. It's usually a matter of sometimes financial constraints, but even more often just availability. There's just not a lot of whole buildings for sale. And a lot of times the laundromats are sort of in line in a strip center or shopping mall, and there may not be an opportunity, again, financially otherwise to purchase the whole mall. So a lot of our members who do own their buildings, it's a standalone structure or kind of a small strip mall where there may be just 1 or 2 other tenants. But again, there's a lot of different options for you out there. In terms of who we're serving everybody. The good news is that everybody has dirty laundry every week, no matter what. But if we had to really sort of pare down to our core customer, very core customer, it would be that lower income family that is renting their space. Again, we'll talk about how we've expanded our market with homeowners and those that have ready access to equipment, but that is really our our core customer. BH, what would you say is sort of the avatar for your typical customer, if there is one?
Oh, it's funny you would ask because this is where, no, mind you, I don't. You can come from any background. This is where big pharma helped me out because I always start with who is your demographic, who's your
Yeah.
target customer, right? And if you know your target customer, you know where they breathe, you know where they sleep, you know what they eat, you know where they shop. If you know those things, then you know how to deliver your store, right? So my target customer is about 85% of our customer base is women, and more often than not, women who are accompanied with children. If you know that going into the equation, then you want to build a store that is welcoming of both women and children, right? And so, apartment dwellers more often than not, but also students. We find quite a number of students that'll visit us. But I would say to you, um, there's this notion that when you build a store, it's in demand, and so you don't have to give a service that appeals to your customer base. I don't subscribe to that. I think you need to make an attractive store that people are willing to travel to and even bypass other stores to get to you, because this is a you are competing, right? You're competing for that customer. You need to treat them like that. You appreciate them. You need to serve them with the interest that they need or have, and make sure that your store is worthy of their time and their dollar. And so when you're building your store, make sure that you're targeting the customer and meeting their needs. And there's ways you can do it. You probably heard me say earlier, we had Starbucks coffee and free Wi-Fi. Even before free Wi-Fi was a thing, we were doing it. But because we knew that our customer base would be bringing children, and we wanted them to be able to get homework done while they're in our store, because it is productive time, or it could be. So yeah, yeah.
Awesome. No, great. That's super helpful. And I'll take this opportunity before I switch to the next section to encourage you to put some questions in the question and answer box here. I just answered Tabitha's question about coming to the Clean Show. Yes, coming to the Clean Show. It'll carve years off your learning curve.
Absolutely.
And the show is every other year, so your next opportunity to attend is not until the summer of 2027. So that's the easiest recommendation I can make, is to come to the show. So let's jump into some of our.
Can we back up for a moment there? Because
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think for those of you who are not familiar, I would encourage you to go online and just look at the information about the Clean Show. I'm not selling the Clean Show, but I can tell you it is one of the first things that I did, and I don't regret it, because you see every manufacturer, every vendor, they're all in the same place at the same time. So if you've got questions about what equipment to get and which equipment is more technologically advanced and which one is more durable, which has the longest obsolescence,
Financing options.
financing opportunity, all of that is under one roof. And I tell you, you will be literally running from place to place to make sure that you cover all the bases. And you will not get that opportunity anywhere else. You can talk to people, but everyone you talk to is going to have a singular opinion. I've got, this equipment, and so you should consider that, or I've got that equipment, so you should. Instead, if you go to the Clean Show, you see all the vendors in one location, and you get to compare one to another, and you'll see which advantages they have that meet your needs better than the other, and then you can make an informed decision rather than just take a risk or a guess. Right? So,
Yeah,
Clean
no,
Show is
excellent. And
great.
Andrew just put the link for the Clean Show in the chat, so
Thank
you
you, Andrew.
can explore that further. Just a real quick question from William. He's asking how your arrangement with Starbucks works. You mentioned making Starbucks available to your customers. You had a short version of that answer?
Yeah, Starbucks is not going to say, the store will not work with you, but there are machines that have that create vended coffee, if you will, and very well, and you can use Starbucks coffee in those vended machines. And actually, my provider specifically provides Starbucks coffee and Starbucks hot chocolate, which was an attraction for my audience, because in the areas where my stores are, there were no Starbucks. Period. You're not going to find. I very, very decisively or deliberately put all my stores in the most populated areas of Philadelphia, and sometimes the toughest areas of Philadelphia, and you don't find Starbucks in those areas. So yeah.
No,
And
good.
if I can give you a link afterwards. If you hit me up, I'll give you the link afterwards on some ways you can do that.
Okay. Yeah, and in a couple of demographics related questions, I'm just rolling through real quick from Bill and then Cora asking about getting the data, the demographic data. So there's a couple of quick resources. And again, we've got a video on this, Laundromat FAQs on YouTube. Andrew, I'm sure, can help us putting the link in the chat. But simply put, there are demographic services available online. There's several of them that you can sort of find on your own. I think we tend to like idealspot.com is one that I think does a good job. But also, as you start to connect with some of the commercial laundry equipment distributors, and in some cases, the brokers that may be representing stores for sale, they can often be a resource too on running a demographic on a location. So it's out there, and that is helpful to you. We do have resources that can help you interpret that data. We have a best practices white paper on that. We've got videos, and I do one-on-one consultations with our members all the time on demographics. But again, your local dealer is also going to be a great resource in understanding that information. So,
And
yes.
and for I don't think you used the term yet, but distributors, the distributors are the ones that'll provide you with the equipment. I've never seen an industry ever where the distributors will help you design your store, choose your equipment, choose and even help you find a location and provide demographic data for you. So this is a very, very helpful industry in that people reach out to kind of pull you along and help you make decisions so you don't fumble through them or mistake your way into success, but you
Hmm.
can speed through it. So distributors are very helpful.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll talk some more about their role as we go along here. And then Andrew, why don't you put in the chat, if you would, a link to our website that has a full directory of all of our distributor
Ah,
members by state,
great.
as well as a directory of all the service providers and manufacturers. That's another good resource for you to put that on. So, yeah, and so I'm glad a couple Clean Show questions popped up. Yes, the Clean Show is coming up August 23rd to the 26th. Yes, you can still register. Yes, we will have, I don't know how many hours, several hours of educational programming just from CLA. Each morning, there are afternoon sessions. There are 400 exhibits. It's one of the largest trade shows in the US. We are expecting the better part of 8 to 10,000 attendees. So this is where you want to be. And it is not too late. We expect a lot of last minutes. And actually, Andrew gave you both the link to the Clean Show website where you can register, but also the CLA page that has all of our ancillary events. We have an event for our women's laundry network. We have an event for our Laundry Cares Foundation. We have a huge reception for our members. We've got a laundromat tour of Orlando next week from Friday, the day before the show. If you want to get on a bus with a bunch of laundry hacks like us and go see four of the top stores in the Orlando market before you even go to the show, we have that opportunity for you as well. We just added another bus. So yes, lots of information available to you, and time to get on it. So, all right, let's get back to business here with some of the content why you should think about the laundromat business, and then I'm going to balance that off with some of the challenges. But at the core, this is an essential service. We said earlier, people need clean clothes every week, rain or shine, regardless of downturns in the economy or recessions or good times or bad times. Now, not that we're not affected, we certainly are, but nowhere near what other industries may experience. When it comes to the essential service, that's something that was really put to the test during the pandemic, where we were formally designated through the state governments and then eventually the federal government as an essential service. That's why our members were able to stay open, during the pandemic. So you hear a lot of recession proof. I don't like that. I like recession resistant, to kind of parse the phrase a little bit. We certainly are impacted by these external forces, but just mildly, I guess, compared to a lot of other industries. And we've held up pretty well during some of those, most recently, the Great Recession in 2008 and 2009, and as I mentioned, the COVID crisis. Another thing that a lot of our members like, and BH referenced a couple of these considerations, is this notion that it's a pretty straightforward business. You've got to have a great location. You need to keep it clean. You need to have the equipment up and running, need to have a friendly staff. But as you all go out and visit laundromats, you can see there's a lot of people that aren't executing on those simple considerations. So I like to say simple but not easy, and meaning that those keys to success are pretty evident. It's another thing altogether to be successful in, in being able to make those things happen. So, yeah, th those are some of the things that I think are out there. And again, that simplicity, like Brian said, not as reliant on hundreds of employees, not reliant on lots of inventory, not reliant on chasing down receivables. So that simplicity, is something that, a lot of our members talk to us about as enjoying it. So, um, but to be successful, you have to pay attention to it. You need to work the business. And this is where some of this, social media content talks about it being a passive investment, or giving the sense you show up once a week and dump buckets of quarters, and that's all that you really need to do. That's not quite the case,
That's
but
right.
it does offer a lot of flexibility. And so, kind of a flex time business, I think, is a more accurate description. You need to put the work in, but more often than not, you have an opportunity to kind of dictate when you're going to be spending those hours. And of course, outside of, an equipment leak or an attendant that doesn't show up, where you do need to respond to an emergency. But week in and week out, it does offer, some of those notions of flexibility. So, and, as Brian and his partners demonstrated, you don't need to be part of a national chain to build one of the best stores. I'd put those 5 stores in Philly up against any in the country, BH, and just shows that you can do those, on your own with getting the best advice and the best support in order to make that happen. So, those are all things I think you should keep in mind why our members are excited about the business. Of course, they like the profitability. No one's in it for the love of doing laundry. But beyond that, there are considerations in terms of serving the community. There's considerations in terms of being able to build a multi-store operation. And again, when I talk to business owners that have had experience in other fields, or even executives that have had experience in other fields. Those are things that, compare favorably when you compare the laundromat, where it just requires fewer people. You need to have
Yes.
good people, you need to train them well, but it's not that same lift that you might find in some of those other industries. So, BH, if I can put it back to you, maybe just a quick moment on kind of the day in a life
Yeah.
of a laundromat owner. And so I know quite often each day is different, but just for a newbie's perspective, how would you describe kind of the hours that you need to put in and what that day in a life looks like?
Okay. So our stores are 24 hours by design. I knew going in that I wanted them to be 24-hour stores. Um, but also, I mentioned earlier that our stores are in some of the hardest hit parts of Philadelphia. So safety was a concern, right? Particularly if you're 24 hours. That also helped me to make some decision about whether I wanted to be a cash store or a card store, if you will. And I elected to have cards because then there's no cash on site at any time. My hours of operation, it depends on what we're doing. I mean, at the end of the month, obviously, I'm doing finances and making sure that not just payroll, but all of the bills are paid. And but you can do that remotely. And I wanted to make sure I knew from day one that I wanted to have multiple stores and that I wanted to be able to do much of this remotely. But there's a part of this that I would not sacrifice, that is about knowing who your customers are. When you're connected with the faces and the names of your community, then they welcome you as being part of the community. And so you need to put some face time in your stores and be there on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be every hour of every day, but you do need to be in there. You'll work better with your staff. You'll work better with the community. You'll work better with your customers. And I can tell you, I know 2 and 3 generations of people that have been coming through our stores, because just going there and welcome Mrs. Smith and her granddaughter or whoever, they come to know you. So you're dealing with just normal things. If something happens with a machine or a card reader or something like that, then you need to correct those issues. But there's there's not very many things that you can't do yourself. I like that it's a hands-on business. Much of what you have to deal with is you can do yourself. You're going to need a service team occasionally for bearing jobs and things like that. If you're starting out, eventually you'll be able to do those yourself. But there really isn't anything about this industry or this business that you can't do, right? And I just love that it really is hands-on, person to person, customer to customer.
Awesome. No, well said.
Yeah.
Catching up on a couple of cleanups on the questions in the chat and so forth. Pete, just get a hold of our office if you think you're going to be tight on the laundromat tour. I'll make sure that you've got someone you can be in touch in and make sure you can join us in progress. Thanks for signing up. Bill is asking about number of employees for a 3,000 square foot operation. I guess the way I tend to answer that, BH, is that I would say that most of our members will have, for an average size store like that, would have one attendant on duty for all the hours that they're open throughout the week. Okay. Now, what are exceptions to that? Well, maybe it gets real busy on a Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and you want to have a little bit extra help to care for customers and clean up. Another exception would be if you're processing a lot of wash, dry, fold orders and have that part of your business, you may need
So,
to have additional people on the team. Does that hold water for you, BH?
yeah, I think, and I had a sliding staffing or scheduling model, which is when we first started opening, I had, either I would be there or one of my business partners would be there with a tech or a staffer. And then, but it would be one per shift. As we started to pick up and as wash, dry, fold started to pick up, then we shifted to having one in the morning. So from 7 to 3, another from 3 to 11, and then an overlap, right, between the two. And then on weekends, we may have two because the wash, dry, fold load is so much greater on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and sometimes even Monday, that we might double up on a shift then. But to start out, you really only need one person per shift. I don't know if you intend to be 24 hours. Most stores are not 24 hours. They're open typically from like 7 to 11 or 7 to 9, depending on where you are. But you don't usually need more than one person per shift. They can handle it.
Okay. Let's see here. I'm just working on some of these Q&As, but let's move on to, all right, we've made it sound all rosy and wonderful. What are some of the challenges? And again, keep these questions coming. It's great. Why not laundromats? So I'll kind of run through this, and BH, you can kind of add whatever flavor you like or disagree or add to or whatever makes sense for you. But one of the bigger issues that I'm seeing right now is just a matter of sort of inventory and scarcity. Working with so many of you every single day, I'm just finding that the industry is hot right now, which is wonderful. But it also means that some of the stores for sale inventory has been somewhat limited, and it's always tough to find great locations for new store builds. So that's not a discouragement per se, but I think you need to manage your expectations and understanding that there's just a lot of competition for these locations that can be somewhat market dependent. Obviously, I would say as a general rule, the larger the metro, the more difficult it might be to find the perfect store for you.
Absolutely true.
But again, I want to say that just you might get lucky and find a store in a week or two or three, but more likely it's been a longer lead type opportunity for at least the members that I'm working with on an everyday basis.
I'd agree.
Um, Another thing that I hear from our members a lot over the years is this, a little bit of a euphemistically phrased thing here, but when you're running a laundromat, you're often not just dealing with the general public, but often in sometimes tougher neighborhoods. And so everyone's got a different worldview. Everyone's got a different sort of attitude and aptitude when it comes to dealing with whether it's people that are loitering or people that might be homeless or people that may be addicted. These are things that you will see showing up at the laundromat. And so that's not for everybody. And that's where I like to give my number one, listen up now, my number one piece of advice, go out and do laundry. put
There you
two
go.
loads of towels in your trunk and go stop and do laundry at as many laundromats as you can. Now, you are going to learn a lot about what you like and what you don't like, kind of get the vision for what your store will look like in the future. If it's in your own market, you start to build a little bit of a competitive analysis, start to inventory the local stores. But also you're going to get a feel of is this where I want to be every day or most days of the week? Is this where I want to operate the business? Is this a good fit for me? So there's no shame in that. There's no wrong answer here. I had a member not long ago, BH, that we had a great introductory call as we do with all of our members. And she called me back about a month or two later and said, Brian, I'm going to be the shortest lived member you've ever had. I said, wait, what did we do? What's the
Peace
problem?
out.
She said, you know what? I've got a busy day job, a corporate job. I spent some time in the laundromat, and I just honestly, just looking in the mirror, I just understood that this really wasn't the right fit for me. And I said, congratulations. You know, finding that out at the front end is so much more uh, productive than finding that out 6 months, a year, 2 years later. So, you know, get out and do laundry. It's going to serve you in lots of different ways, and this is just one of those ways.
Yeah, let me offer one other comment on that.
Please.
And that is, um, I would say get your location right. You know, this is a great business, but if you choose a bad location, it's a bad location forever. If you choose a great location, it's likely to be a great location forever. But you can't undo a bad location. You can change your machinery, you can change your POS system, you can change your staff. You can't change your location. So I would just say get your location right. As far as what are some of the things that are challenges in laundry? You're absolutely right. Sometimes you're going to deal with some wayward folks. But I would argue that if you are connected to that community, you can address things pretty forthrightly and they go away, right? So people respect business. You're trying to conduct business there. In our stores, we don't want, crazy music. We don't want loud people. We don't want people. We want it to be a family place where women and children can come and feel safe every minute of the day, 24 hours a day. And that's going to, dictate some of the things that we tolerate and things that we don't. And we're not bashful about saying what those are. So,
Mhm.
you got to deal with, we've never had anybody inside doing or dealing drugs. We don't allow alcohol in our stores, period. But you got to set those rules and stand on them. So,
Well, I mean, just one practical thing that came up in the chat. They were asking about card operations. I think you're among those, I believe, that require a customer to have a laundry card in order to access the restroom. Is that right?
yeah, we did that for the longest time, and then we stopped. But I'm not opposed to it. We just changed our card system.
Okay.
But yeah, but I think it is a good idea. If you are in a when you're starting out, I think it's a great idea to have card access because you're gonna, people are gonna come in your store, they're gonna test your store, they're gonna find out what they can do and what they can't. But once you're in that community and they know who you are and you know who they are, then you can tell folks who are trying to come in and use your bathroom as a bathhouse or whatever. And you don't want that to happen
Yeah.
because people will go in and lock the door and not come out for 6 hours. That doesn't serve you or your
Yeah.
customer.
Yeah. No,
That's
you don't want to have that situation.
yeah. So
So,
cards can help that.
yeah. Okay, good. I was just trying to give that one example and rounding out some of the challenges that I see every day from our members that are working with us. One is the kind of the scarcity and availability. Two, just making sure this is a good fit for you. But the next thing that comes up is just the financial aspect of it. So this would take our entire 3 hours to really go into the weeds here on the financial requirements, but I do think we owe you some kind of calibration on what we think you're going to need. And again, nothing on here says free laundry or seller financing or anything like that. So the realistic view, stores for sale, it's a little bit more evident, right? There's a sale price that may be high, low, perfect, yet to be seen. But typically, if you are going to be financing that purchase, you're probably going to need somewhere on the order of 30 to 40% of that sale price of the store in cash, and then obviously the ability and qualification to borrow the balance. Acquisition financing is a different thing that I'll talk some more about in a later slide. But I think that's a good way to do it. So if the store's for sale for $1 million, figure on you're going to need 350K in cash and the ability to borrow the balance. Now, when it comes to building out a store, the math is somewhat different, and I wanted to frame it up a little bit differently. So I think the best way we can frame up an example for you is to exclude real estate, because that's a complete wild card. And again, the real estate will have whatever the comp value of that real estate will be in your market. For the store itself, and most often our members are either building in a vanilla box or in a retail space that's being purposed for something else before it becomes a laundromat. And that's the context that I'd like to give here. So for equipment, washers, dryers, carts, folding tables, etc. All the build out and leasehold improvements, all the utilities, countertops, floors, ceilings, turning this space into a laundromat. I think you need to start at $300 to $400 a square foot. The asterisk being anything short of a real quote on a real project is really just a guess. But I wanted to give you some kind of framework of what's going on. Now, so you say, well, Brian, you just said that the average store is 2,850 square feet. Yeah, I would say that most of the projects that we're seeing our members execute on are definitely in excess of $1 million, million two, million four on sort of the lower end, and plenty of projects that that can go into the multi-million. So the $300 or $400 a square foot, I just want to kind of give you some kind of touchstone to begin with. Now, again, some markets, its construction costs are lower. In some markets, construction costs are a lot higher. In some markets, there are impact fees for sewer access that are not included in this estimate. And certainly I talk to laundromat builders almost every day, and I ask this question, what's the per square foot? So I do hear $500. I do hear $600. Wow. I do hear $515. I hear $492. So I just, really just encourage you to get a handle on what you think this is going to cost. Getting into that distributor conversation is going to be an important thing, not just for the cost of the equipment, but also having someone with an educated perspective that can be looking at the facility and give you some sense of what it's going to take to convert into that type of space. So, there's regional differences, there's equipment differences, there's construction differences, there's impact fee differences. But I think this is a good place to start. And again, we think we owe you a realistic look at what we think you're going to need. And again, on a new build, you're typically going to, again, need that 35% of the total project cost available in cash. And then obviously the qualification to borrow the balance. So we'll talk some more about the financing as we go. But, Brian, anything there that makes you shake your head, or you think I've got?
No, that's absolutely right. I can tell you with, it's 35% is minimum you can expect that. Sometimes it goes up as high as 40%. I always start the equation with what is the biggest rate limit of reaction into making whatever my plan is happen. And that is the lender, right? Mm-hmm. So what are the lender requirements? So if you're buying a store, your lender is going to look at the valuation of the store and say, what are you paying as a function of EBITDA? Earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization. And then they're going to say, is it 5X? Is it 4X? Is it 6X? That'll determine, whether they're willing to participate, and they'll guide you on what is a realistic target for that store, right? So that's the first thing. Okay. The second thing you said, having 30%. So if you want $1 million store, you got to have, 300,000 liquid to jump in. And that is one of, you said, what are the challenges in laundry? That's one of them. The barrier to entry is pretty high because of the cash requirements. So, yeah.
And again, I'm not even talking about kind of the so-called operating capital or startup capital. You got to do the marketing. You got to give yourself time to ramp up the business. And so another piece of advice I like to give is, don't get the store open on your last dollar, right? Because you're going to need to feed that store for a period of time, and you're going to need the ability to handle some of those considerations. So I'm going to try to do a little catch up here on the chat questions. BH, Melina in the Q&A box is asking you, how have you minimized theft from in-house staff, whether it be with inventory or wash and fold? I imagine one of your answers might relate to the way you're accepting payments, but I don't, I'll let you kind of answer your, um, kind of how you've dealt with the potential for employee theft.
So that's a great question, and it's one I tried to think through before I got in. I think the best way to handle theft is to treat your people right, right? Treat them respectfully, give them a living wage, and support them. I mean, you're going to find that you come to know people pretty intimately when you own a store. So that's the first thing. Second thing is automation, right?
Mhm.
So, for example, we never took any cash at the register, right? Even the wash dry fold is on a card. So you can put money on a card and then use the card to pay for the wash dry fold. So there really is no opportunity to take cash out of the system there. Third thing is your inventory. Our inventory rooms, we have one manager for our locations. That is the only person that has access to the inventory room other than us on inventory day. That manages there to receive it. It has fingerprint locks to open and close the door. So again, automation is helping us. And yeah, our vending machines, even our vending machines don't take cash, they take card. So there's no way that, someone could say, hey, listen, give me $1 and I'll give you, 5 sodas or whatever.
Right.
So automation is the answer.
Yeah, and I would just further emphasize camera systems and access
Yeah,
control, right? And
yeah.
so
That's another one.
who's
Yeah.
got access to what, and then the ability to capture everything on video. I'm going to do a catch up here in the chat, try to do a quick lightning round here. Um, Geneva asked about attended or unattended stores affecting insurance costs. Yes, absolutely. Uh, it is more difficult to access coverage for unattended, and if you can access it, it's certainly significantly more expensive, even more so on the 24-hour basis. Now, BH operated all 24-hour stores, so you just have to bite the bullet. When it comes to insurance, side note, insurance for laundromats is a specialty field. We have our own insurance agency here at the association that we have been operating almost 40 years now. And so please use us as a resource to understand what you're going to need, let alone pricing it out when the time comes. Because laundromat insurance is not a layup. It's something that really takes some effort. So it is a factor, Geneva. Myra is asking, how long have you owned your stores, BH? I think it's 12 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I started my first store was 2012. So yeah, it's 13 years now. So
13 years.
yeah, and
Okay,
we added
awesome.
a new store about every other year thereafter.
Okay. Lisa asking about a list of distributors. You see that Andrew has since put that in the chat. Geneva had another question. Are membership dues deductible? Yes, membership dues are deductible as a business expense. Um, Pete was just asking about security at the locations. I think you covered that pretty well. Again, with you kind of say, well, you don't close, so that helps in a way.
Yeah.
And then you've got the video surveillance that comes into play along with the
I,
training of
w-
your
I will
attendant.
tell you, someone asked about theft. Your bigger concern is the insurance component and slips and falls and things. And your best defense against those sorts of things are cameras, right? So in all
Yeah.
of our stores, you can't stand in any place within any one of our stores and not be on at least 2 cameras. And so what happens is those people that might be into creating frivolous cases, they'll come in, you'll see them look around for the cameras. I mean, you can actually see them looking for the cameras, and then they'll back out, right? Or I can tell you a perfect example. I had someone who literally we watched her come into the store. She took a cup of Gain or Tide or whatever it was, poured it on the floor, skidded her heel through the Gain, and then sat down and started screaming, right? So of course I come running like, ma'am, you okay? You okay? She said, no, I've fallen down. I've hurt my back. I hurt my neck. So, okay, I'm so sorry. Let me call 911. I'll get somebody out right away. But in the meantime, let me make you comfortable. And I'll go back and review the camera to figure out what we can repair. She said, camera? What camera? Right? And
Yeah,
then all of a
you got
sudden,
to
I
have
gotta go. I
cameras.
gotta go. Right? So,
Yeah. You have to have cameras that work and cameras that are actually recording, and you need to maintain those recordings for a lot longer than you
absolutely.
might think that you do
So
when
true.
it comes to that. So again, it's not an everyday thing, folks. We don't want to scare you off, but again, we're giving you the full rounded picture
Yeah.
of what it's like to do this. Luann is asking, do core customers, meaning the low income, typically pay the upcharge for premium services such as folded laundry? I would say that, you know, it's a typically a different target market for your full service wash, dry, fold, and delivery than for your core self-service. But that's kind of a generalization. Sometimes you will find some of the lower income customers, particularly if they're multi-generational households. If they've got three, four, five people in that household that are working, they may need to use wash, dry, fold to allow for more shifts to be working. But BH, would you buy that? It's typically a different customer demographically, particularly for delivery.
For delivery for sure. But what I will say is that, we are very much steeped in an on-demand society, whether it's, Grubhub, Uber Eats, or Uber or whatever. People are used to using demand. Even my own kids, right? I mean, they're in college and didn't have a pot to, what in, and they would still drop their clothes off, right? And the reason is because it's convenient, right? So, um, another reason why you need to make sure that your stores are nicely appointed and competitive, because you want to attract not just the folks who are in apartments that are surrounding your store, but you also want that upscale market to find it nice enough that they're willing to come by and drop off their laundry. So you want to appeal to, not just for low income housing or low income patrons. You want to appeal to a broader market than that, and you'll do fine. Yeah.
Okay. You guys are crushing it with the questions. So I'm kind of balancing the time we have remaining with all these questions. So I'm going to lean into the questions a bit more. Let's see. William also asked, how do you deal with the inevitable lease escalations and maintain your margins? Rent goes up. That's a fact of life.
Yeah. So true.
So, it shouldn't sound as simple as you got to keep raising your price on a regular basis, but I mean, that's pretty much it, isn't? I mean, now in the lease negotiations, you certainly want to try to minimize the escalations. You want to negotiate all of that. You want to look to try to maintain that over the term of the lease, but on a day-to-day, it's bumping your price when you need to.
Yes, that's so true.
Okay.
Fight up front with your lease and fight hard. And this is exactly why I said up front the first move that I made was to join the Corn Laundry Association, because I wanted access to that library of information, one of which is a white paper on lease negotiations, right? If you get that right, it wins for forever. If you don't get that right, you're going to be paying through the nose potentially forever. So you want to make sure you've got a great lease lawyer or someone who understands leases inside and out and clauses that need to be added. And CLA gives that to you freely as a member. So, I'd much rather pay for the membership for CLA for a nominal fee and be able to get a lease that works for me for the rest of the life that I'm in that store than to pay the escalations that I wouldn't know about from a landlord who knows a heck of a lot more about leases than I do. So yeah.
Yeah, no, we're gonna double, triple, quadruple down on leases in the next 35 minutes before we we sign off here. So all good questions. I'm gonna see a bunch more questions queued up, but we're gonna cover a little bit more ground and then get back to that because we've got a sense over the years of what some of your more prominent questions are. Valuation basics. Again, we need 6 hours to cover laundromat valuations. If we need to cover it in 5 minutes, here's what we would have to say. Laundromats are typically sold at a multiple of the net operating income. That's how they're typically marketed. That's how those asking prices are typically justified. So what we tend to be talking about is the net operating income, operating expenses taken away from the top line revenue. The accountants can argue about depreciation and other elements, but it's usually backing out any of the owner compensation in terms of expenses and typically backing out anything in the way of depreciation as a real expense. But historically, most laundromats sell between 3 times and 5 times the net. You could argue that doesn't mean what they're worth, but that's what they sell for,
Right.
somewhere in that 3 to 5 times range. Now, that's over a historical period of time. Are there stores that are worth less? Yes. Are there stores
Yeah.
that sell for 1 or 2 times net? Yes. Especially these days, are there stores that can reach the 6s and 7s?
Yes.
Yes. Generally speaking, valuations are trending higher, but traditionally it would be in this 3 to 5 range. Local comps will matter. If you're in a rural area, that's one thing. If you're fighting tooth and nail for a store in New York City, that's another. But let's try to add a little bit more flavor. And I think this is more important than what the multiple number is what constitutes this. So even 3 to 5 or 3 to 6 or 2 to 6 or 3 to 7 or whatever range you want to use, that's a range you can drive a truck through. It's a lot of money you're talking about. So really it depends on what is driving that. And let's start with net income. Yes, it's a multiple, but let's just say this, that the higher volume the stores and the stores that are generating a higher net do also command a higher multiple because people are more in demand of these larger stores. So that is a factor. But more to the point, our age and condition of equipment in terms and duration of the lease, right? So this is where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, it is.
So you cannot pick up and move a laundromat unless you're a daredevil expert and really know what you're doing. It just can't happen. So therefore, picture it like this. There's an existing cash flow for this business that's protected by a lease for a finite amount of time. When your lease is over, you're out of business. So when it comes to an evaluation, the more time that's remaining on the lease, the more value that store will potentially have because the buyer can see a runway toward operating the store for X number of years into the future. Conversely, and this is for those of you that are looking for stores at Biz Buy Sell and looking online, you see a lot of stores with short lease remainders, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years. So as an educated buyer saying, well, how much am I really willing to spend on this store if there's only 6 years left on a lease or 4 years left on a lease or 2 years? I saw one this week that was a month to month. These are things that you have to bear in mind. Now, equipment. What is the value of a store with 5-year-old equipment that we just shared earlier is going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not in excess of $1 million, versus a store that has 18-year-old equipment or 21-year-old equipment or 15-year-old equipment or 25-year-old equipment. So really what it comes down to is the longer the lease, the newer the equipment, the more the laundromat is worth.
Okay. Absolutely correct. Yep.
The shorter the lease, the older the equipment, the less that store is worth. And again, there's a lot to finesse within that, but these are the absolute principles we want you to keep in mind, is that the equipment factor and the lease factor are very important. And so just to hammer it 2 more times. One, you can afford to make some mistakes. Okay. Everybody makes mistakes in this business. Everybody learns from it. You'd rather not overpay for a store, but you could probably survive that. If you have a lease problem, it's fatal, right? You cannot typically extricate yourself from a bad lease situation, which is being too short in terms of duration or having, to William's question earlier, having escalations that are just unmanageable, particularly as you get later in the lease. And the other mistake that I see quite often is people buying the store for list price or kind of asking price, but the equipment is old and they've been told that it's perfectly fine and they can keep it running, but they find a few months in that it's junk, and then they have a note on buying the business, and now they're facing a note to buy the equipment. So there is no free lunch. Someone needs to re-equip that store on somebody's dime. And so your offer needs to be informed by these factors.
Totally agree.
Okay, so that was longer than the 5 minutes, but I just wanted to tee that up. And also just keep in mind that due diligence can be challenging, particularly if it's an all-cash store. So bear that in mind. But again, we've got resources that can help you navigate that. And understand that the store that you're looking at doesn't exist in a bubble. Maybe there's a laundry cafe across the street, or maybe there's 3 terrible stores in the 3 blocks around you. Like those are things that are going to make a difference in terms of what the store is worth and what the opportunity looks like for you. So bear all those things in mind when it comes to valuation.
If you guys do nothing else, please think about those things. Because those, you know, what you sell in your store, how you fold your wash, dry, fold, whether, you know, how you pay your set, all those things are important. But if you don't get the location and the price right and the lease right, it really has long-term effects that you can't overcome.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lease is
Well,
huge.
we feel like part of the service is that, let you know the mistakes that have been made before so we don't have to repeat those. In fact, we've got a session at the Clean Show specifically on veteran operators confessing their mistakes so you can hear about them and avoid those mistakes yourself as you go.
I'll tell you how important leases are, at least for me. Um, my lawyer was the guy who was the chief counsel for Pet Boys nationwide. The reason I chose him is because he was used to dealing with leases in the hood. That was important to me. And the first thing he said is longevity matters. And so all of our leases are either 10 years with 4 5-year options or 20 years with 2 5-year options. So we're trying to get to 30 years because when you buy a store, you need to be thinking about your exit before you say yes, right? And you cannot sell a store with 2 years left on the lease. It's not going to happen, right? Because you're going to take the note and then you're going to have to pour more money in. It's not going to cash flow. So time really matters, and those options are what allow you to sell the lease. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So you heard him right, folks. He's talking about total lease period of 25 to 30 years, which sounds
So
crazy. And to some landlords, it sounds crazy. But if we had a poll of our members right now live, they would say 10 years plus 2 5-year options for a
there you
total of
go.
20, or 10 plus 3 5-year options for 25. It can't be too long. You're protecting that cash flow for that extended period that has value to you as the operator if you're going to be operating on a long-term basis. But again, it's someday you're going to want to sell. And so you need to have enough remaining term to make it attractive to a future buyer.
And my stores were 7,000 square feet. So I'm putting in 150, $200,000 in the ground for plumbing. I got to protect that interest, and I can't get that back in 4 years, right? So
Right,
I've
right.
got to have a long-term
No,
lease.
well said. Okay. All right, let's recap. Some of this we already touched on with financing, but I want to make sure that we just recap some of these common resources. Um, so again, some of you have a great balance sheet and you're going to write a check and you're good to go. But most of the members I deal with are really going to be looking for help when it comes to financing this. And so some of you have experience and have an existing banking relationship. Maybe you have another small business. That's great. That's very important to you. We do hear seller financing brought up a lot. It's kind of it was popular 30 years ago, and now it's kind of come back in the social media conversation. Hey, it's great if you can find it. I just don't come across it very often. I do not see a lot of sellers that are willing to do that. If they do, there's typically something wrong. They don't have the records, or there's some other consideration that is putting them in a position of having to offer seller financing. So again, keep it open as a possibility. It's on the list here, but don't bank on that as being there. A lot of people, when they first get started, are going to have to take a couple different elements to sort of cobble together that total package that they're going to need. And so I'll end on what I see most often every single day is what I would call captive lenders, industry-specific lenders who specialize in the laundromat business. I know that BH, you've accessed that resource for all of your projects. That is the most common thing that we find. And so because small business lending is tenuous, because a lot of conventional lenders don't know anything about laundromats, the industry created its own sort of financing ecosystem 25 or 30 years ago with a series of what I'll call captive lenders. So they're often affiliated or owned by the equipment manufacturers to help facilitate the sale of their equipment, or some independent companies that work with all the manufacturers to put the financing together for these deals. And so you can find a list of those in our directory that Andrew put in the chat. We're happy to make introductions and get you connected, but that's where we see the lion's share of the funding happening is through the sort of the industry specific laundromat lenders.
And if you've got a check, you can write that's big, and you can pay for your store. God bless you. For the rest of us who had to borrow to build our stores, and mind you, my stores were all built from the ground up. You got to have a lender that understands laundry. Now, my first foray looking for a lender was with the SBA.
Right.
And we ultimately walked away from the SBA. One, it was they were taking forever. I would have had my store open before they actually delivered the loan. That was the first thing. The second thing is most lenders that are outside the laundry industry will not fully collateralize your equipment, right? So they'll only value your equipment as maybe 60% of the loan collateral. Whereas in the laundry industry, they'll use the full value of the equipment. And so your dollar will stretch longer if you use as Brian called them, the captive lenders, those lenders that are within our industry because they understand laundry, they understand the value of equipment and the value of laundromats in general.
Yeah. And sometimes maybe not everybody agrees with me on this, but I do see that their underwriting of the loan is an important second pair of eyes on your project. Yes, they would love to sell you a loan. Yes, they'd love to sell you the equipment that they're loaning on. However, they want to make loans that they get paid back. And so having a second look at the demographics, a second look at the pro formas, a second look at equipment mixes. Again, don't use that as your sole source of verification or edification, but I think that that is something that, when they're seeing multiple deals cross their desk every single day, that is a good point of reference that can help you.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to share some of the data just real quickly from some of our benchmarking, which again, you have access to these surveys as you join the association. But I really want to focus on some of these expense ratios so we don't get kind of distracted by some of the other considerations. This is the core of the business right here, is controlling the expenses and keeping them in line. So the statistical average for expense ratio for all of your utilities, water, sewer, gas, and electric, is 20% of gross sales. That's the statistical mean across all laundromats. Now, our members, or the better operators, I like to say, might find themselves closer to that 15%, particularly if they've got new equipment, right? So I know it sounds like a sales pitch, but the newer equipment is more efficient than the 18-year-old stuff that's in this store that you're looking at. And that store with 18-year-old equipment may be at 30% utilities, 32%, 35% utilities. And so you can see the difference between a store that's operating at 30% utilities versus one that's at 15 or 13%, right? This is your one sort of variable cost, variable expense. The more laundry you do, the more utilities you use. So the efficiency at which you're able to produce those clean clothes is it make a huge factor on profitability. So do that quick math, especially if you're looking at an existing store, just back of the napkin, just look at that. Oh, they're at 28%, or oh, they're at 17%, or oh, they're at 35%. That's going to tell you a lot right off the bat. Rent, we just were talking about leases. The statistical average is just under 24% of sales. I would obviously the lower the better. I would say the realistic target that most of our members share with me is that they're trying to keep that at 20% of gross sales. And that is, to William's question earlier, keeping it at 20% even as the rent escalations kick in over time. But realistically, the actual is higher than the target, especially when it comes to the leases because it gets expensive out there. Now, payroll is a little bit challenging. BH operated on a 24-hour basis. Others of you will not. Some of you are taking in wash, dry, fold and have extra employees. Some of you are not. But what the numbers say is 22% of gross with a target in that 15 to 20%. So it certainly can be higher than that if you're carrying on more services, but that's kind of where people want to come into play. And so once you get beyond these three major expenses, the typical laundromat, you quickly drop to single digit or lower single digit expenses, if you will. Assurance at a couple of percent, repairs and maintenance at maybe 5 to 7%, security, phones, Wi-Fi, all the other kind of ancillary stuff. So that's important. You need to control those expenses, but these are the three big dogs. And if these are out of whack, it's very difficult to be profitable on an ongoing basis.
And then your equipment lease, your equipment note.
Yeah. So from a cash flow standpoint, right, the debt service would be in this. So it's hard to add it here because some are paying cash and some are highly leveraged, some are medium leveraged. But yeah, this is before debt service. Very good point.
So I don't know how far each of these people are in their journey to create a laundromat. But for those of you who are numbers inclined, he just built your business plan. I don't know if you heard, but he gave you the percentages. You can back in based on your investment, based on the size of the store you're looking at, or and you can figure out what is a reasonable amount based on the percentages he just gave you. That's what CLA does for you that nobody else does, right? Because you're trying to figure out, I'm going into an industry that I don't know anything about. Where do I get factual information that allows me to make good determinations or good judgments about the decisions I make? He just gave it to you, right? And we've got white papers on every bit of this waiting for you to use if you just call and say, hey, I'd like to have this one or that one.
Appreciate the sales pitch, BH.
No, but it's
Thank
real.
you.
I used it. That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, well, I didn't plan for that, but I love it. So a couple more things on the statistical front. So again, gross revenue. That doesn't mean every store does 335,000. What it means is that that's the statistical mean. And on a crosstab, this ties back to that 2,850 square feet from the first slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is that? It's like 115, 120 a foot in gross sales on an annual basis. So, again, I'm just giving you this for context and kind of pinning the thing to the wall here. That's what we see as the statistical average that ties back to the 2,850 square feet. The net profitability, the mean at 25.5, the median at 27. We have certainly have plenty of members that far exceed these numbers. I'm not going to put you on the spot, BH, but we have plenty of stores that are scuffling and struggling to break even. But as a percentage basis, and again, if you have that 20%, better yet, 15% utilities, if you have the rent at 20 and you keep the payroll at 20, you can start to kind of, like you said, kind of build the picture of what might be left over. Again, not including the debt service, but understanding how you can kind of build out a profitability model.
Sure.
Now,
Can you offer them, I think one of the most valuable pieces of information when you're trying to figure out what a store can do or whether the store is even potentially a good target. What is the national average for turns per day currently?
okay, so you asked me the most loaded, difficult question
Sorry
with
about that.
10, 15 minutes to go. um, I have strong, if not unpopular, feelings about turns per day. So, just for definitionally, turns per day basically says what's the average number of activations of your washers on a 7-day basis. Okay, so you can do the math. You take the sales divided by the vend price per load, and that kind of gets you to a number. And you hear a lot of 3, 4, or 5 turns per day. And you'll see a lot of pro formas. Those of you that are at a pro forma stage and working with the distributor, you're probably going to see the math laid out. Okay, what did the store do at 3, at 4, at 4, at 5, at 6 turns per day? So the short answer is we don't survey turns per day. We don't have a number. There's often a number attributed to us. You hear a lot of that 3, 4, 5 turns per day average. Now, as an operational tool, as a metric, when you're operating a store, turns per day is incredibly valuable.
Absolutely.
Right? So you can look into your system, BH, right now that my 40-pound washers are operating at 4.7 turns a day or 6.2 turns a day or whatever that number might be. And it helps you understand where your customers are going. You can compare month over month or year over year and kind of use that as a metric for how busy the store is, essentially. The challenge on the new store basis is trying to make the math match up, and it is more art than science. You're kind of taking the demographics, right, and the market demand estimates. You're taking the competitive analysis. You're taking your equipment mix and the commensurate vend prices on each size machine and trying to roll that spreadsheet into, okay, what does it do at 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 turns a day? So way too long of an answer, but I'll put it this way, the tribal knowledge, the conventional wisdom would put it in that 4 or 5 turns per day for a successful store. Also bear in mind that you have different sizes of equipment, right? So most stores today have 4 capacities, if not 5 capacities of washers in different numbers, right? So maybe you're only doing 2 turns per day on your 20 pounders, but you've got 20 of them. Maybe you're doing 12 turns a day on your 80-pound machines, but there's 2 of them. See my point? So it really needs to be factored in, and you need to work with experts to help you fully understand that. So,
I will tell you, for a new store, you don't have anything to go on, right? You don't have any projections. You have to make them yourself because there's no history. Whereas if you're buying a store that exists, you see some history. And
yes,
so I use it to figure out what is my break even. I can
right,
back into that equation, figure out what my break even is based on what my rent will be, based on what I believe my payroll will be, based on what I believe, and then back into it. And now I know, okay, if I'm hitting 8.6 a day out the bat, and my break even is at 4.6, I'm killing it right out the bat. Or guess what?
right.
I need to amp up. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a helpful context. And what I see when I counsel our members every day, which is again part of your membership, we are always happy to help you with these questions, is on this conventional wisdom, tribal knowledge of 3, 4, 5 turns a day. If you do your math and you need 8 turns a day to break even, right? The red light is flashing.
ding, ding,
Conversely,
ding.
if it pencils out real nicely at 3 turns a day, then maybe you're feeling pretty good about things. So there's a lot more to that, but turns per day is a challenging metric. This is something you can just look at on your own. I'm not going to read through this kind of buy versus build matrix. The real answer is it depends. There can be good opportunities. There's pros and cons to both. I think we pounded on the leases pretty hard, but just one more one more kick at the cat here in terms of what some of the lease considerations are. But again, you can kind of read through this. I think we covered this pretty well. People will argue about the minimum on an existing store that you want to see. I've always kind of pegged it at 10. You can make some argument it's at 8 or 9 years maybe. But again, what are your finance terms? No one's going to loan you on a 7-year loan when you have 5 years left on a lease,
Not
right?
gonna.
I see people under this, misapprehension there, but I think that is a good place to start. All right, so we've got more resources. I'll start to flip through those, but I'm going to take this opportunity with 10 minutes to roll here to get through as many of these remaining questions as I can. And I know we all appreciate BH, all your time and volunteering and helping us and to giving
Loving
us your real world experience. One quick one from Rowd is, do you accept EBT payments at your store?
Yes. And your card systems will allow you to do that too. It's set up
Okay.
on the card system to accept EBT.
Yep. Okay. You typically need a keypad in order to
Exactly.
accommodate
And the
that.
card system has a keypad on it.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So let's get into a few of the questions. Where did I leave off in the chat? And don't take offense, folks, if we've already addressed your question, I'm not going to call it out. Mariah's asking about multi-stall type bathrooms versus a single restroom style bathroom. In other words, kind of a, you know, one toilet, one section versus more than one commode. What have you? I think you've done single style restrooms.
So space comes at a premium in a laundromat because every square foot that you use somewhere else could have a washer or a dryer generating income. So it's kind of dead money. So, and usually I can't speak to purchase properties. All of mine have been leasehold properties. I could speak to that on another question, but and so they come with, plumbed, hard plumbed with men's or 2 bathrooms. It's not usually men's or women's, 2 bathrooms. And so we've always kept them as single stall. I think you should keep your bathroom small. You don't want parties in your bathroom. Um, and even with small bathrooms, you sometimes find people are having parties in your bathroom. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
No, that's a euphemistic but accurate way to describe that, BH. I like it.
yeah.
Tim, he asked earlier, price per square foot including machines. Yes, that was including machines. What is the price per square foot without machines? Again, it varies a lot. I've talked to a number of people recently. They're plugging in that first $150 sometimes $200 for the build out, with the balance being for the machines. But again, it depends on what's needed. Is it plug and play? It's got adequate electrical, adequate plumbing already. Great. But there's plenty of cases where you're going to have to do some serious upgrades to the water, sewer, gas, and or electric. So
For sure.
you really have to understand that, yes, particularly on the electricity, depending on the size of panel that's in there now. Bill, we covered your question on the multiples for valuation. Damien's asking a common question, ICBH. What do you think about starting the business with used machines in good condition, 7 or 8-year-old machines, and then transition to new machines when there's more cash flow? I mean, I'll give you my opinion, what I've seen, which is it's kind of a pie in the sky. There just doesn't seem to be a full store's worth of 7 or 8-year-old equipment out there to purchase. If you could find it, great. But again, I would also caution on things like longevity and repairs. And to a certain extent, you're giving up the best 7 or 8 years of the lifespan of that machine in the rear view mirror. So it just as a practical matter, I don't see. Now, can you find onesie twosies to fill in and kind of do a stepped retooling and improvement of what's there? Yes. But it really just depends on what you can find, and used equipment is at a bit of a premium these days as well.
I would say used equipment is used for a reason. Somebody flipped it because they wanted something else, or it had a problem. I wouldn't depend on that as my first choice. You could certainly do that for a short period, but I back into equations from the end user standpoint. If your competitor's got 3-year-old equipment and you've got 18-year-old equipment, people are going to look at shiny, bright, and bright lights and neon, and so just consider the old equipment. The other thing is, I will absolutely agree that older equipment is far less efficient on utilities. And so even though my first store was in 2012 and my last was in 2019, in that 7-year span, the utility difference was about 6%. So the older store
6
was
points.
six,
All right,
yeah,
percentage points.
exactly,
Yeah.
6%. So the older store is at 22, 23% for utilities. The newer store is at 14%. So, I mean, it's
Huge difference.
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, Pete, you might be our MVP on the questions here. Really good stuff here.
Thank you, Pete.
You're asking about percentage of sales for lease agreement. Again, we covered that with the 20% target. Pete asking, can coin-based machines be converted to card? Yes, with an asterisk about if it's really old, but most are retrofittable pretty far back.
Yeah,
So just ask your dealer about that. Bill's asking, are there people that can inspect the equipment to verify the age? Yes, but you can also typically discern that through the serial numbers. There's usually
exactly.
a code based on the manufacturers. We can point you to that, or you can get a hold of the manufacturer. Carrie, is 14-year-old equipment well maintained, too old? Not per se, but again, you're signing on a 25-year lease or a 20-year lease or a 15-year lease. At some point, that store does need to be re-equipped. Let's say it's at 20 years. That's still 6 years into your plan. At some point, you need to be ready to do that.
And it depends on your competitors. I mean, are your competitors equally aged, or are they considerably newer? If they're considerably newer, you're walking in a situation where you're less competitive.
Yeah, excellent point. Let's see here. I'm trying to get some highlights. Geneva, can I hire an attendant as a 1099? Well, I'll just say, you really need to check the independent contractor test. I will just say this, more often than not, it's really hard to make the argument that your attendant is a 1099, like nearly impossible. Now, there are some quirks where people do kind of a wash, dry, fold
Business, yeah.
business there, but really tough to make that work, Geneva.
If you're making a distinction between a side hustle, which somebody else comes in, they bring their detergent, they bring the clothes, and they're using your machines. But the whole thing about 1099 is you don't provide them with their resources or their tools, and that would be a hard argument to make. So,
Okay. Good. Well, a lot of thank yous in the chat. I think we got to 90% of the questions. I just want to roll through a couple other resources here for you. We've mentioned the Clean Show at length. We'll come see you in person. BH will be there. I'll be there. Can't emphasize that enough. Andrew put the links in the chat. Come see us at the Clean Show. You're welcome, Bill. You're welcome, Jocelyn. Looking ahead, those of you that are going to be buying a business that has Wash, Dry, Fold or plan to build a business with Wash, Dry, Fold, we have a separate, unbelievably great conference just for that coming up in October. So check us out at Wash, Dry, Fold. We'll be down in Nashville. We had a huge crowd last year, lots of vendors, lots of great education on Wash, Dry, Fold. You're welcome, Ryan. Good to talk to you yesterday on our new member call, Ryan. Good man. Let's see here. More resources. Yeah, we mentioned insurance. We've got utility buying programs. We have digital marketing support. So we try to build out as much as we can to support you in your journey as an owner. As I said earlier, when you join the association, one of the first things you get is a link to my calendar to book a one-on-one consultation. I did one with Ryan yesterday, as well as another brand new member yesterday. So take advantage of this. Spend a few $100s before you spend a few $100,000 or more. With the discount and this QR code, the dues are $4.99. So again, a small price to pay to invest in your education. Even if you don't end up doing this, spend the money up front to get all the best information as you can. One of the things that Ryan and then also it was Tom yesterday is it's a way for you to get your undergrad in laundromats. You read the best practice guides, watch the videos, do consultations. I've got great friends like BH that I could connect you to in our network. So, please take advantage of that. And
And that annual audit, the annual reports, that was so helpful because it has comparative data by region. So when I was trying to figure out what I mean, obviously I visit all my competitor stores, but I also want to know what's going on in my region, and if I'm interested in moving or doing a store in Baltimore, what can I expect? That data is in there, cut by region. I mean, it's pretty impressive data.
well, we're happy to do it. And now that we're at the 90-minute mark, Brian, can't thank you enough. Everybody in the chat has been so appreciative of your willingness to share the real world experience as a business owner. I'll see you down at the Clean Show. And thanks to all of you for joining us. You will get a copy of this. We will follow up with you to help you facilitate your membership, help you facilitate the other resources you're going to need. Wishing you the best of luck in your search. And we can't wait to help you along the way. So thank you for joining us.
All right, Brian, thank you. Thanks to everybody here for being here.
All right. Thanks, BH.